Okay, good morning. I'd like to call the Door County Board of Supervisors to order on Friday, February 24th at 10 a.m. Would you please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call, please.
All right, you got 18 present, 3 excused.
Okay, we have 18 present, 3 excused. Presentation of the agenda. One motion and second. All in favor? Aye. Correspondence. Any additional correspondence to note? Public comment.
Do you want to start in the room first?
Sure.
Sir, if there's anyone who'd like to speak, if you please come up to the podium and give your name and address. We provide 3 minutes. So.
Hi, I'm Christy Weber. I'm the past president of the Sturgeon Bay Historical Society. And I just wanted to thank you all for honoring George Evenson, one of our past board members, in such a way. And we just want to let you know that we equally honor his contribution to the county over the years and how much he actually supported the resolution 21 on the agenda, which is the pot tower. He was the first to speak at our board meeting when we were deciding on whether or not to take that issue up. He said, of course we have to. So today's kind of a double honor to him. So we just wanted to thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, then we'll go to those individuals online. If you'd like to speak, you could please raise your hand and I can give you the floor. If you'd like to speak, you can again raise your hand. First one is Paul Zahn. I will move you into the queue. You have 3 minutes to speak. You're currently muted. You have to unmute yourself, please. Paul, you have the floor, but you're currently muted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, now we can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, this is Paul Zahn and 7946 West Cedar Drive, Forestville. As we mentioned, my wife and I in our email to the county board, we would appreciate the board to adopt a groundwater protection ordinance as Kewaunee County has. With the ever-increasing herd size and manure, we need to get a step up on this now to avoid future problems. For the same reason, we oppose the doubling in size of SNS Jersey land also until we can get some more protections and groundwater protection ordinance. Appreciate the board looking into this seriously. And thank you for listening to my comment.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Christine Reed, I will move you to the queue. You have the floor. You have 3 minutes.
Christine Reed, 597 Sleepy Hollow Drive, Forestville. I spoke during the January 24th meeting and followed up in writing. I also requested that Door County adopt the same manure spreading restrictions as Kewaunee County's Chapter 30 Public Health and Groundwater Protection Ordinance, which states, quote, waste shall not be mechanically applied to land or allowed to directly drain to landscapes likely having areas less than 20 feet in soil depth to carbonate bedrock during the time period of January 1st through April 15th, unless an exemption is issued in writing by the Land and Water Conservation Committee. On or about March 10th, the Land and Water Conservation Committee will meet and may take action to amend the April 15th date mentioned above. It doesn't specify that manure can't be spread on frozen ground, or manure can't be spread when rainfall greater than 1 inch is forecast within 24 hours of planned application. It's clear that manure can't be spread on or drained to less than 20 feet of soil at all between January 1st and April 15th. Everyone on the board has had the opportunity to see the color-coded map with the results from the AEM survey, and it shows that over half, especially the western half of Southern Door, which includes the Anape watershed and includes S&S Jersey Land's main facility, is less than 20 feet of soil over karst. It is the karst and thin soil that makes Southern Door extremely susceptible to contamination from manure. UW-Stevens Point professor Kevin Mazzarek confirmed that karst in Door County is even more fractured and porous, and soils are even thinner than Kewaunee County, so we need this protection even more. I didn't hear from any supervisors, but I did hear from Sean Donahue, who sent a copy of Door County's animal waste storage ordinance, and he claimed, quote, "The current Door County ordinance and Solarian standards address the winter spreading concern covered by the Kewaunee County ordinance," end quote. I carefully pored over that 22-page ordinance and didn't find one word about no spreading on less than 20 feet of soil between January 1st and April 15th. It was just a distraction. So I responded to Mr. Donahue and pointed that out and quoted Greg Coulter's email where he was clear that Kewaunee County's ordinance, I'm quoting him here, prohibits manure spreading on lands with less than 20 feet of soil to bedrock from January 1st to April 15th. I believe the April 15th date can be amended annually by the LCC. End quote for Mr. Coulters. On February 6th, the day before the S&S permit hearing, Mr. Donahue wrote back and basically said Door County doesn't see the need for this extra protection. He closed by saying, quote, "As Door County's approach is tied to standards and prohibitions rather than an arbitrary date range, Door County's enforcement is less likely to be successfully challenged," end quote. First, this is not an arbitrary date range. These dates are outside of the growing season when plants can take up nutrients.
You have 30 seconds.
Dumping manure on fields outside of the growing season greatly increases the risk to groundwater. Second, I was clear in my original message. Quote, "It is not speculation that spreading liquid manure on thin soil over karst contaminates wells and groundwater. This has been studied and proven extensively in Kewaunee County." I'm surprised that Door County sees our request for this protection of a karst area, which was learned the hard way in Kewaunee County. I'm surprised that this sensible request is seen as a, quote, challenge.
Thank you for the comments, Christina. I gave you some extra time, but we have to stop now. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Is there anyone else who would like to speak? For the final time, is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Oh, we have one more. Steve, I will move you into the queue. You have 3 minutes. Oops, sorry. Steve signed off. So I'll go one more time. Is there anyone else who'd like to speak? Steve, I'll try one more time with you. You raised your hand one more time. You're currently muted. You have to unmute yourself. You have 3 minutes.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you. My name is Steve Etop. I live at 2305 Orchard Lane in Sister Bay. I'm privileged to be the fifth generation of my family to live in Door County. But right now, I'm scared for Door County as unprecedented amounts of phosphorus and nitrogen are now entering both our ground and surface waters. Phosphorus is the enemy, and it comes from many sources, but certainly includes, but is not limited to, human and animal waste. We all know about the comprehensive orchard mildew residential well water study done in Kewaunee County 5 or 6 years ago. Southern Door has similar, if not worse, geology and can't possibly handle all the manure that's already being trucked in and spread there. It is and will continue to impact both our drinking and surface waters. The estuary expansion, if approved, will definitely negatively impact both our ground and surface waters. Surface water E. coli readings by the UW Oshkosh last summer show the need for change. And it will those readings will likely close many of our favorite beaches this summer. If this trend continues, it will dramatically impact both tourism and the real estate industry, which are two of our top 3 industries in Door County. Professor Val Crump, who is newly retired Dean of the School of Freshwater Science from UW Milwaukee, tells us that it is likely the foremost authority on water in the Bay of Green Bay, I might add, is telling us that up to 50% of the phosphorus coming into the bay is coming from agriculture. And I would add, I think the vast majority of it is coming from capitals. It's time for action, and the Board of Supervisors needs to be proactive before it's too late. This will not be easy to turn around once we have E. coli readings that are too high for recreating out on beaches. It's going to have a dramatic effect on real estate, tourism, our economy, and our quality of life. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Okay, I'll ask one more time if there's anyone else who'd like to speak. One last time, is there anyone who'd like to speak? Okay, thank you.
Any supervisor's response? Approve of the minutes of the January 24, 20.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
there we go. Go ahead.
I'm concerned about this issue. I'm not sure, and I don't know if the rest of the supervisors know all of the rules and the guidelines that the state has and that the county has. I assume that Soil and Water is the one that would be working on this. Is that correct?
Actually, we have a special report we're going to move right into, and we'll give you an update.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Approve the minutes of January 24th, 2023 County Board meeting. We have a motion and a second. Any changes, additions, deletions, comments, grammatical error corrections? If not, by voice vote, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? County Administrator.
Sure. Just given the duration of the items we have on the agenda, my monthly report with an update on all the projects are included. There were no significant, I guess, updates from last month. So unless there's any questions, we can move on.
Okay. We are going to move down to our special reports and do our 3 special reports next on the agenda. So first up will be the broadband update. Jessica. Good morning.
One second, Jessica, I gotta get it on the screen as well. Okay, you're live.
Good morning, microphone.
You're good.
Okay, Mike, okay,
You're good.
great. So good morning. Thank you for having me in today. I was asked to put together an update for you, so I'll get right into that. Are you gonna go through? So I kind of just did an update on April 22 to current, what we have going on. So I'll go through that for you. So I think you all know we had the Finley engineering report for our county that we had from November of 21, and just some information from that. It was determined that 1,574 miles of fiber are needed to serve the entire county, with about 1,092 miles needed to serve the rural parts of the county. The cost and the assets needed to bring fiber to the entire county is over 130 million, with the costs for the rural areas at over 76 million. So this is kind of the direction that we took from Finley to take our federated approach throughout the county. At that time, county administrator asked our municipalities to create broadband technology ad hoc committees to start discussing the broadband needs in their area under their municipal boundaries. At that time, Bailey's Harbor, Liberty Grove, and Sebastopol had committees established, but those were the only municipal committees that existed. So we launched our County Broadband Advisory Committee here in June of 22, which includes stakeholders from county supervisors, economic development, education, utilities, medical. We also have a residential telecommunications industry employee that lives in Liberty Grove and a municipal committee member on our committee. In June 30th of 22, we hosted our Broadband Municipal Summit at the ADRC building and invited all the municipalities and the committee members and chairs, if they were established, to join us in broadband discussions, and handed out a municipal checklist and a guidebook that I created for them to utilize as their ad hoc committees in their broadband discussions. And in addition, GIS created large-scale E911 maps for them to look at and utilize in their committees. And we also did kind of a smaller scale Wisconsin Public Service Commission map overlay of their municipalities to show them what the Public Service Commission thinks is established for coverage for broadband in their areas. And that was really provided to them to show really what the inaccuracies were at the time established in those maps, and what the PSC has from providers that is reported currently throughout Door County. 14 of the 19 municipalities attended that summit and left with their materials, and several ad hoc committees were started at that time. In June of 22, Bailey's Harbor was awarded a Wisconsin Public Service Commission broadband grant in partnership with Insight Communications in the amount of $1,890,000. Ground level engineering is finished, and it is submitted to Wisconsin Public Service for make-ready assessments, which they're waiting to get that report back for them. In June, I also joined the State of Wisconsin Governor's Digital Equity and Inclusion Stakeholder Subcommittee to grow and strengthen the digital inclusion ecosystem in Wisconsin, develop, inform, and advise the Wisconsin Digital Equity and Inclusion Plan for our federal BEAD funding that will be open and available for grants as well. We have a established partnership with United Way of Door County, who is going to act as the fiscal agent to work together on a countywide digital equity and inclusion plan. And we are working together in a subcommittee to apply for grant funding for this program through several different grant opportunities that are available through state grants and federal grants as they come up to grow and strengthen the digital inclusion ecosystem throughout Door County. I have compiled work product and best practice from several of the ad hoc committees that is now being utilized by all the other committees to minimize those committees from reinventing the wheel. This includes requests for information, a request for proposal, financial ideas, survey letters, and more. The committees continue to create and share work product, as well as reach out to each other for information and support and talk on a regular basis. I will continue to compile work product as they work through their memorandums of understanding and contracting with the internet service providers that they are partnering with. The FiberNet doorcounty.org website has grown as a one-stop shop of broadband information and will continue to grow. The site includes the broadband survey, our broadband planning map, our survey map, reference materials for our municipal committees, and reference information for residents and businesses. So what I included here is a screenshot from the Wisconsin Public Service Commission of what they think is reported, well, what is reported by internet service providers for available service and speeds throughout the area. The map itself considers the city of Sturgeon Bay and the village of Sister Bay completely as served by the federal definition of broadband, which is 100 by 20 megabits. And those two areas total 37% of our census households and 22% of our E911 addresses throughout the county. So the broadband survey that has been pushed out since last June that we partnered with the Public Service Commission. We have a growing partnership with the Public Service Commission Broadband Office, and we have partnered with them using their survey to help determine our unserved and underserved locations throughout the county, as well to get broadband survey information and data to use for our municipalities. 14 of our municipalities have mailed the survey out to their tax base to get sufficient response rates to use for grant support and documentation. The last survey data that was pulled on June 25th of 2023 shows that 3,768 survey responses are now in the database, which is a 13% countywide response rate based off our census population. So little information on that January survey data poll, since this is the largest poll we've had so far. The WISER survey itself defines served locations, download speeds need to be greater than 25 megabits and upload speeds are greater than 2.99 megabits. So 37% of our respondents are unserved in the county that have no service at all. 43% of our respondents are underserved, having download speeds that are below the 25 by 3 standard, and 20% of our respondents are considered served in the county. 59% of our respondents are spending about $50 to $100 a month just on internet service alone, and 17% are paying $100 to $150 a month on internet service alone. Only 37% of our respondents can participate in a video conference or stream video 95% of the time without issue, and only 29% have bundled service that includes TV and phone service. So the federal definition for broadband and what the BEAD funding and a lot of the federal funding is linked to is at a minimum 100 by 20 megabit speeds with the potential to provide symmetrical speeds such as 100 by 100 or above. So 1% of the county survey respondents are considered served by the federal definition, and 19% of the county survey respondents are considered underserved by the federal definition, and 80% of the county survey respondents are considered unserved by the federal definition. So this is kind of an update of what's going on with our municipal committees. You can see that the two green areas, which would be Bailey's Harbor and Washington Island, have grants and work in progress that they are proceeding on. Bailey's Harbor construction should start this year at a ground level, some of it. The blue areas, which you're going to see as Liberty Grove, Jacksonport, Sevastopol, Neswapi, and Clay Banks, have all made decisions to partner with ISPs at this point. And I know as of 2 days ago, Sevastopol, Jacksonport, and Clay Banks all applied, and Washington Island have all applied for a Wisconsin Public Service grant that just closed 2 days ago to try to get some funds to offset those infrastructure build-outs. Yellow are committees that are working on ISP recommendations for their board. And I do know that as of Friday, the Village of Sister Bay has issued their request for proposal. I know that The town of Sturgeon Bay is working on submitting theirs by March 1st, that they will issue their RFP. Gibraltar is very soon. Village of Egg Harbor has issued their RFP and they'll be in the review process. And I know that the joint committee in Southern Door with Brussels, Union, Gardner, and Forestville will be reviewing and discussing their RFP this coming Monday night at their meeting to issue that and get that out to providers as well. And red, as you can see, is Village of Ephraim, City of Sturgeon Bay, and Village of Forestville are the only ones that do not have committees and are not really doing work yet at this point. So in April of 2022, the served areas and work that we had in progress total was about 45% of the county census households and 33% of the E911 addresses. As of March, the served areas and the work in progress total 72% of the county census households and 64% of our E911 addresses. 8 of the remaining 10 municipalities are currently working through issuing their request for a proposal to ISPs with the goal to use their annual town meeting as a date to discuss their ISP partnership recommendation with their board, go over the total project cost, subscription cost details, possible tax levy impact, and answer questions as part of an open public meeting. Currently, these are the 4 providers that have been answering RFIs and RFPs to all of the municipal committees. So Bertram Communications is based out of Random Lake and has an office in the Bailey's Harbor area. They use an active optical network in their infrastructure, and they focus on buried deployment as much as possible. Clay Banks has partnered with them, and they have applied for 2 federal grants and 1 state grant at this point. And Niswapi has partnered with them also. Their financial mechanism is applying for grants and tax levy. Bug Tussle Communications is pretty new. They're from the Hilbert Brown County area. They're not new as a company, but they answered an RFP to Sebastopol. They utilize XGS-PON, a passive optical network is what a majority of ISP providers do nationwide. They focus on a buried network deployment also, and Sebastopol has recently partnered with them and applied for a Wisconsin Public Commission grant. They're hoping to start work this year in 2023, and their financial mechanism is industrial revenue bonds as a financial model. Frontier Communications is a national carrier. As you all know, they are one of the ILECs in the area also in Northern Door. They focus on using XGS-PON also, and they utilize a hybrid of buried and aerial networks depending on what their engineers recommend. Jacksonport has partnered with them, and they have applied for their Public Service Commission grant. They will be starting work this year, this spring. They're hoping to start April or May, regardless of a grant or not. They're scheduled to start construction, and they will be applying for grants and utilizing tax levy. And then Ensight Communications, based out of Green Bay. As you all know, we have our dark fiber under the county under them, and they utilize XGS-PON passive optical network also. Their focus is more of an aerial network deployment with some buried if they can. They have partnered with Bailey's Harbor and have that awarded grant from 2022. The construction in Bailey's Harbor should be starting, and Liberty Grove has partnered with them, and they'll be starting their ground level engineering towards the end of the summer and have that wrapped up by the end of the fall. They are all applying for grants and utilizing tax levy as well. So just a few financial options that some of the committees and the municipalities have been looking in. The State Trust Fund, which is the Board of Commissioners of Public Lands, that's invested in loans for municipalities and school districts. This has been established since 1871 in the state. I know this is the route that Bailey's Harbor is looking at for their financing. They offer fixed rate loans with interest rates that are competitive with the bond market. And it's a very simple one-page application that some of the other municipalities have used for like marinas and different things, projects, capital projects. The interest that is earned is distributed annually to fund the public school library materials throughout Wisconsin. USDA 100% loan is an option that I know Niswapia is looking into, and a couple of the other committees, because there is a very low interest rate on that. That is a fixed 2%. And there's usually up to 150 million available for each round. USDA usually has at least one or two reconnect and 100% loan options. They have about 5 different grant mixed loan options that they have under them annually. And the principal and the interest rate payments are deferred for 3 years. And the amortization period is based on the composite economic life of the assets funded plus 3 years. There is about 5 different options that you can apply for under USDA. And then lastly, industrial revenue bonds, which is Bug Tussel's focus, financing with a municipality or another public entity, issuing the federally tax exempt bonds on behalf of the private entity. And then the proceeds are used for the construction and improvement of the infrastructure. Debt is repayable from the proceeds of the revenue agreement with the enterprise for whose use and benefit the project has been provided, And the current versions of the type of the agreement include partnerships with counties due to the need for the middle mile backbone and dark fiber, but we do not have a need for that. But that has been Bug Tussel's focus. They have about 14 counties that they're currently awarded grants in partnership with in doing middle mile and fiber build outs for the counties themselves. We already have our dark fiber, so there's not a need for that. So they're looking at the model with the municipalities to kind of partner with each other to get a larger pool and issue the bonds with a larger pool. And that is it. Questions?
Thank you. This is really exciting to see such great progress moving forward. And based on the, maybe not the survey, but the geographical areas, are you seeing an impact with, for example, since there's only 3 mentioned in the village of Ephraim, if they are they not participating, or they're participating in a different way? And does it create a service gap by being a circle in the map that is either, I guess I don't know the status for them, and if you can speak to that, if it impacts the surrounding communities or if it's not really an issue?
I don't see it being an issue impacting the surrounding communities. I think they're kind of biding their time in Ephraim specifically just to see what like the path is with Liberty Grove and Gibraltar and everyone that's surrounding them. And then they're going to kind of take a look. They have issued the survey, which I just found out about 2 weeks ago. So I'm getting those surveys back in. I think they're kind of just looking to see where those surrounding communities are going to go, and then the scale to economics and the benefit of those larger communities surrounding them.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Anybody else? Here we go. Hugh. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 2 quick comments. I think number 1 is just a gentle reminder to please fill out and do the FiberNet Door County survey. That survey, again, helps populate the Wisconsin Public Service Commission website with information that helps us make sure we get more than our fair share of federal dollars to help fund broadband projects. That data also helps the municipalities get really good on the ground information as far as how broadband is deployed, where there's gaps, and that is very helpful in them in doing their planning. So please fill out that survey, and especially as you go through your town meetings or neighborhood associations, please get folks to participate. So that's my first comment. My second comment is I want to thank Jessica for her leadership, jumping in with both feet as we started this new committee a year ago. And I want to applaud all the great collaboration with the municipalities that have joined in. There is an incredible amount of transparency. If you go to the FiberNet Door County Municipal Dashboard, you can see all the activities of the municipalities. You can see what their project costs are, who they're working with, how they're getting grants. Everyone is willingly sharing information, best practices, lessons learned, and it is a tremendous effort. Just to give you an idea of how fast you can move when you have many hands helping, is town of Sturgeon Bay didn't have a broadband committee, although they have severe underserved and unserved areas within their community. And we were able to stand up a committee in December, and next week they're going to be issuing an RFP out. We were able to leverage efforts from the town of Bailey's Harbor, from the town of Sebastopol. We were able to get financial pro formas from work that was done by the town of Nassau. So there is a great advantage. Also, I have Claybanks did some great work relative to kind of RFI questionnaires. So all of that was done, and with expeditiously. So if folks, I see some of the municipalities that haven't started yet, take heart, because if you find a champion within your municipality to stand up a committee, there has been a ton of work that's already been done that you should be able to move through this process with a lot of folks, at the touch of a phone call, that are willing to help you out with what you need. So again, Jessica, thanks for your leadership, and thanks for all the community stakeholders that have collectively got us this far. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jess, can you speak to who's doing the work on 57? There's a lot of orange, conduit going in the right of way all the way up past Jacksonport.
There's multiple providers, but I know Bertram Communications is one of the main providers that are going much further north than some of them. I know Charter has a very small section in Valmy also. And then I've heard a couple other rumors, but those are the only two confirmed ones that I really can get answers on and say definitively. And WPS is obviously doing burying through Valmy where the bridge is going to be replaced. So a lot of that kind of started some of that.
Thanks.
Sure.
Anybody else? Oh, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next up, discussion on public health and groundwater protection ordinance. Greg? Sean?
Do both.
Okay.
Good morning, everybody. All right, so Mr. Coulter's and I are here to discuss the recent correspondence and some discussion about Kewaunee County's public health and groundwater protection ordinance. What is it? Do we need it? What is our current state of regulating spreading of manure during the winter months? Kewaunee County's public health and groundwater protection ordinance is an ordinance that regulates spreading of manure. These types of public health ordinances are allowed in certain circumstances when you can show that there is a public health need for them. And then in that case, if you can show that, you can go outside of what the state has as regulations. Otherwise, you're limited to adopting state standards. So what Kewaunee County's ordinance does is it creates a prohibition on spreading of manure from January 1st through April 15th. They enacted that ordinance in 2016. And at the time, it probably was needed more than it is today. 2018, the state came out with new Silurian standards. Silurian standards address when manure can be spread on land. And it really indicates that unless you can incorporate or inject manure into the land on soil depths of less than 20 feet, you can't do it. So effectively, during the winter months when the ground is frozen or it's snow covered and you cannot incorporate or inject, the Silurian standards prohibit land spreading of manure. That's what we have. Our ordinance enacts or incorporates the Silurian standards into our nutrient management plans, which the vast majority of livestock operations in the county have. So instead of an approach from January 1st through April 15th, we look at, well, what are the conditions of the soil? Can we meet these standards? For instance, we have a really cold December. Ground is frozen, ground is snow covered, where you can't incorporate it. You can't land spread. Under the Kewaunee County's Chapter 30 ordinance, you could, unless the committee would change that date range where it's prohibited. Now, the inverse is also true under our ordinance, where if we have a really warm January, a really warm April, where you can incorporate and you can follow the state standards, you can spread. It's based on conditions of the soil and ability to, what word am I looking for? Incorporate according to state standards that they've determined are safe spreading times. Now, Kewaunee County also has adopted the Silurian standards. They adopted them when we did in 2018. So we have 2016 when their public health ordinance was put in place, 2018 when they adopted and incorporated the Silurian standards. Since they adopted the Silurian standards, they have not issued one citation that I'm aware of under their public health ordinance. My guess is they're relying on the Silurian standards. My concern with adopting a fixed date range is we're not paying attention at that point to, can we comply with state standards? Is it safe to incorporate manure at this point in time? We're simply saying, no, because it's January 2nd, you can't incorporate. I feel that we are currently protected under our current ordinance, and it is a better approach than a fixed date range. I also want to address the SNS Jersey land references on the CAFOs, concentrated animal feeding operations, which are generally larger livestock operations. In the case of milking cows, it's in excess of 700-ish, 800-ish animals. Once they get over a certain threshold and you become a CAFO, you can't winter spread except for emergency circumstances. There are requirements where they have to store manure over the winter and spread outside of winter months. So when there's references to, we need to be concerned about these CAFOs spreading, and Mr. Coulter can correct me if I'm wrong, they can't outside of those emergency circumstances. They have to have certain capacity to hold over the winter months the manure. So I think I addressed everything that we need to. If there are any questions, I welcome them.
Can you touch on your county's requirements for that year?
The CAFO storage is 6 months of storage that they're required. So it's 180 days, and that's typical for what we do too. Sometimes we might push that out to 210 days.
So they theoretically all farms should have.
Correct.
Oh, Jeff, sorry.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Does Door County have any in their ordinances with the depth that was referenced by some of the earlier callers?
Yes, and I don't know if we want to go to the website or not, but we do have it on there, kind of a summary of chart to show what liquid manure can be applied where and where solid manure can be applied. So it differs from less than 2 feet, 2 to 3, 5 feet or more, and then 20 to 5. Correct. It's in the ordinance. It's in the standards, and we have a table on the website that kind of summarizes and make it a little easier to understand because it is very complicated.
Thank you.
Vinny?
This might be that same question again. I'm sorry if it is, but just for public education awareness and reminder for myself and anybody else, what is the dynamic of a freeze thaw situation throughout the winter versus set dates? Like if it's set dates and it's still frozen on April 16th, then you could spread or inject. So I think what you're saying is that obviously knowing the soil condition, but obviously it freezes and thaws all winter at different times. So how is that addressed? Just so people understand like what that, like
Sure. So
diversion of soil.
part of it is they have to do pre-tillage, and the pre-tillage is sort of where you break up those macropores. You break up that maybe a little bit of frost layer that might be on the top that's going through that freeze thaw. But then you inject it in, and again, it depends on the depth. You can either inject it or work it in after you apply it. There's also gallon limits on some of these soils and some of these time periods as well, so that you're not getting those runoff events. So the whole idea is to make that soil in a condition that you can hold that manure so it doesn't go off site.
Thank
You?
Thank you. Can you comment then, also there's been some discussion about the survey that was done by DATCAP regarding the area electromagnetic analysis that was done. Is that ordinance being updated just relative to the accuracy or increased accuracy of those maps? Or how is that information disseminated relative to the regulation of how manure is spread based on that data?
Sure. I don't think we're going to update our ordinance on that. A couple of reasons. Two, that it's currently in a draft form right now. The last day for comments is today, or I should say the 28th. Secondly, the end product of that is going to be a 5-foot layer and a 20-foot layer for the Snap Plus maps. So what that's going to say is that it's not going to show you those 2-foot layers, the 2 to 3, because it's just not that accurate. There's just, and there's some, you can look at the report, I can show it to you, but they just can't accurately map the shallowest of the soils. So it's not going to be used for enforcement purposes. And you can see that in the disclaimer. But what it will be is a tool for us, or a tool for the farmers to say, hey, we need you to come out here and look at these soils. This map isn't right, or this map is saying this or that. That's when we physically go out there, dig a hole, and measure the distance to the bedrock.
Great, thank you.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So again, sort of a, general education summary for folks. I mean, what I'm hearing you say is that the slurring standards are as good or better than this chapter 30 that Iwani put on the books before the slurring standards went into effect. I mean,
are they better? Are they as good? I mean, a blanket prohibition is going to be no spreading, whether you can or not. So during that time frame, you're not going to have any spreading. I question whether or how enforceable that would be if challenged. But in terms of preventing the application of manure, it's just blanket prohibition. Now, will the slurring standards protect you outside of that time range or that date range? Sure. I mean, if you can't incorporate pursuant to the standards outside of that date range, it's going to stop you, where that ordinance doesn't without action from their committee expanding that date range. So they're not apples to apples. One is a condition based, one is a date based. And as I said, if challenged, I don't know how well the date based range would hold up compared to a condition based and adoption of the state standards. But that's my speculation. Obviously it hasn't happened.
Yeah, I would just add that, adopting the last ordinance with the slurring standards, I think has made a big difference. And I think you can see that in some of the water tests that we've been doing for the last several years. So.
thank you.
Jeff?
Yeah, thank you again, Mr. Chair. A question, how do you monitor this? Is it like an at-will? You're gonna go out to certain areas and check it so many times a year? And then I'll use an example on a 40-acre tract. Do you check how many acres of that 40-acre tract you check to make sure that they're not concentrating their levels of input on the interior when we're just checking the exterior?
Are you referring to the depth of bedrock? Actual check, or are you referring
to making sure they're complying with the ordinance that.
Okay. So we do several manure spreading audits a year. So we'll get a call from the public saying there's tankers hauling out here. I can't believe what's going on. We'll go out there and check all of the parts of the nutrient management plan, whether they're meeting all the setbacks, whether they're staying in the soils or the areas of the soils that they're supposed to. And again, if there's, a question whether or not that soil is deep enough, we'll check it. But it's like when you're checking for soil depths, it's a grid pattern.
Okay. Thank you.
Vinny?
I guess a question off of that one and another one. So, but there's regular checking as a part of that nutrient management plan and part of their land plan with whatever services they're using with soil and water. It wouldn't just be if the public calls in, right? Like they're,
Correct.
okay, yeah.
We document every plan that comes in to make sure that fields aren't being double reported.
Yeah.
But in our annual report, I think it shows how many different audits we did. But it's not just complaint driven.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And then I know people are concerned about, and you mentioned it, what would be an example of an emergency spreading situation, and how often does that happen, and how do we deal with it?
Well, there has been one emergency about 4 years ago. You want to explain what happened in that case?
Sure. There was a farm that was going to have an overtopping manure storage. I believe there's some health issues or something along those lines. But basically a couple fields were identified to spread that manure. So it wouldn't overtop and spread within the individual's yard. That was 4 years ago. It's the only one that I can remember that we had. I don't know how often DNR issues them, but certainly they would contact us if there was such a thing to happen. So winter spreading in Door County is far and few between. It's rare.
Thank you.
Morgan?
That was my question.
Okay. Hugh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just two quick questions. Greg, you mentioned the improvement of the water quality since the Silurian standards have been in place. Are those some reports that, based on, especially in the Anape watershed, kind of, I know we've been testing that water, for a number of years. Is there some data that can be published just to show kind of the before and after, just to kind of show how the improvement is? And in addition, our water quality compared to, say, Kewaunee County and, say, Manitowoc County, which have had, challenges with water quality in their rivers. That just being able to publish that data just to show the results, I think would be great from a transparency perspective. The second is relative to concern about private wells. I understand in Kewaunee County, part of the challenge they had with E. coli, it wasn't just animal, they also had human. And a lot of the root cause in Kewaunee County is they weren't enforcing pouts and wells that were inadequate. Do we have that risk relative to making sure that, wells and going after substandard pouts are being enforced in our county, number one? And number two, are there any other activities that can be done for standard well testing in order to kind of be a kind of preventive measure and a kind of a sentinel activity?
Okay.
Thank you.
We've been partnering with UW Oshkosh for several years now. So there's a lot of recent data out there. There's a lot of presentations that we have on our website showing what we have in the last 5 years. We just had a letter go out this spring for the next round, and it states the different percentages that we have for either E. coli, above nitrates, the nitrate levels, coliform, et cetera. So all of those were pretty much below the state average. We're doing really good. But if you want a more detailed analysis of what the water well tests are, you have to go to the Stevens Point, UW Stevens Point well water data viewer. And I know we went over this with Claire the other day, and you can really look at or sort by bacteria, sort by nitrates or whatever. You can see the number of tests that fail or are above the national average or the average in the state. You can also sort that by section, by township, or by county as to how those levels reflect to the state average. Very powerful tool. Happy to show you how to use it. But I'm sure Claire could attest to it, but there's some issues in Kewaunee County when you start looking at those levels. As far as your pouts go, a while back, we did an evaluation of every private on-site system to make sure that they're in compliance. I'm not here to say, Chris or John would have to answer that question, what's happening now, but I believe there's a review for after a certain time period for each and every system out there. Okay. But again, you'd have to ask them.
Great. I thank you. Appreciate it.
Bob?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to follow up on Supervisor Shomo's question about the emergency permit to incorporate, to spread, is that, do we have any, do we as, or do you as a department have any say, or is that would that only be controlled by the DNR? Do they have to reach out? You reference like they have to reach out to the DNR. Is that the only, I guess, permit they need, so to speak, or okay?
Sure. Are you referring to a CAFO?
Yeah. Well, I guess let's talk about both.
Okay.
If any,
So if it's CAFO, and they're gonna apply on their own land that they own, the DNR is gonna have the primary authority on that. If they're gonna spread on an individual's some rented property, then we'll definitely have a say in that, because we
Okay.
can regulate that. But again, we would be looking at the lands that are gonna be the least susceptible, looking at lands greater than 20 feet, et cetera. Now, if it's not a CAFO, it's all us. You know, but we would certainly contact the DNR for guidance.
Okay, I appreciate the clarification. I think it's good for us to know how that works.
Any other questions? All right, none. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I think so. Love my jacket today.
Okay. We, by the way, we will take a break after this presentation.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, so next we have a discussion on the opioid litigation class action that the county took a part in. There has been a new round of settlements approved by the state of Wisconsin. Those settlements, well, actually, I could do a little background to kind of give you an update on where we're at. The board had already approved a settlement of 3 distributors and then Johnson and Johnson, who's a manufacturer. That total settlement was 26 billion, and that's apportioned among the whole country. Wisconsin's portion is on a 70-30 split, where the local governments get 70% of that amount. Those funds have started to come in already. They've been paying them sooner than they were originally scheduled to pay. But now we have a new round of settlements that has been approved by the state. That round of settlements is right around $20 billion. So there's 2 manufacturers and 3 pharmacies, being Walgreens, Walmart, and CVS. What we'll see coming up next month is we do need to decide whether we want to participate in those distributions to local governments. My recommendation is we certainly want to. We want those funds. And what the plan for those funds are, and Mr. Kraigbach could clarify, he was here, but my thought is that we designated ARPA funds for a sober living facility, that these opioid settlement funds would be applied to run the facility until it could become self-sustaining. We haven't found a sober living facility yet, partly due to just not being able to find a proper building at an affordable or reasonable price. But that's the goal with the use of these funds. So really, it's at this point, next month we'll bring forward the option for the board to opt into participating in this latest round of settlements. Now, are there going to be additional settlements in the future? This is the majority of what I would suspect would be the settling parties. There are a couple of manufacturers in bankruptcy right now, which as a part of the bankruptcy will make distributions to local governments and states in addition. So there's going to be some additional funding, but the large majority of the funds that I expect the county to receive were in this last round of settlement and then this latest. If there's any questions, I can certainly do my best to answer them.
Alexis?
Thank you. So I heard 26 billion for the whole shebang and 70% to the municipalities. But as far as Door County, do you have a crystal ball what that is going to look like?
I don't for this latest round of settlements, just because it's going to depend on who opts in. So I don't know that. What I can tell you is I do have the amount Door County received for the last settlement. So there was a total amount the county will receive, and this is broken up over several years, of $633,591 that the county will receive. And that was originally scheduled to be paid out over an 18-year period. There were some discussions of securitizing that payment so that we could receive a lump sum upfront. It would be discounted because we are receiving it upfront, and essentially people would buy the right to receive those funds from us and pay a lump sum in return. It got hung up at a national level. There is a requirement that 85% of the settlement proceeds be applied towards opiate remediation. When we do this securitization, we drop below that 85% because of the amount going to the investors. We're discounted receiving it today versus over a period of time. So at a national level, they went back and looked at this to see if it was something that we could refigure or interpret so that we could securitize and receive funds upfront. But I haven't heard anything, and that's been a couple of months now since that issue came up.
Okay, but what I heard, sorry, was little over $6,000.
$633,000.
600.
Yeah.
Thank you. Good thing I clarified. So like, thank
more
you.
syrup.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well,
Vinny?
I think that was kind of a two, but just in that second round and with the idea of using it for sober living facility staffing, I'm assuming. Do we have kind of an idea? Would that be for 1 year, 3 years, 10 years? Or we don't know because we don't know the amount. Okay.
I don't know, and it really depends on when the settling parties make payments to us. Are they going to pay us? The trend has been to pay earlier rather than paying their scheduled payments, but it's all going to depend on how much we receive when. But I think that was the goal of the department, was to apply it for that purpose.
Dale?
Somebody asked my question already.
Okay.
Thank you.
Nissa?
So kind of a weird question, about opting in, not opting in. Can you think of any reason to not opt in? I'm not saying that we shouldn't opt in, but I don't understand why a county would not.
There's no practical reason to. I guess if you felt that the settlements proposed, or the county felt that the settlements proposed were not advantageous and we could do better on our own, we would opt out and sue individually
on our own.
That really doesn't happen very often with class actions. It's every state and many counties around the country are looking at this. And I have a feeling that most are going to opt in, that this has been a coordinated effort. There are attorneys representing us, negotiating and involved in these types of
Right,
settlements.
less paperwork by opting in as opposed to not opting in, then it's all on us and the costs are on us and whatever.
Right.
Fully. Okay.
Right.
Anybody else? Great. Thank you, Sean.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, we will take a 10-minute break and be back about 16 after.